Welcome back. So now you've deployed your pod using your kubelet. All right. So what is the next thing we are going to do now? All right. Let's just quickly move to our table of contents sheet. So what we are going to do is we are going to start deploying a few more components in the cluster now, right? And the KubeAPI server is the next one. We'll learn about it as a concept, and also we'll deploy it using our YAML. We'll also learn about ETCD, right? KubeAPI server is the server or the interface with which you as a client interact. ETCD is kind of a data store which has all the information about your cluster, right? As usual, I have a slide for it. So let me just quickly, very small slide. Before I go on to the slide, let's go back to our architecture slide. Look at this. KubeAPI server is at the center of everything, right? On the master machine. Remember, Kubernetes is based on master and slave, master and worker architecture, right? So KubeAPI server is the process with which you interact. In turn, it interacts with a lot of other components as well as your entire cluster, right? So this is what we are going to learn about and deploy today. And also the ETCD, which is, as I said, kind of a data store which has the information about your entire cluster. All right, so let's quickly move on to the slide and see what KubeAPI server is. As I said, this is a component on the master machine. It is also the front end, the client interfacing end of the cluster, as this is the process with which you as a client interact. This server facilitates client and server communication with each other. So you will interact with the KubeAPI server will interact with the other processes on a need-to-know basis on the master machine as well as to the cluster, right? What we'll learn in this video today is as I said, what is the KubeAPI server, the ETCD, and then slowly we'll start learning about these components as well, the controller manager, the kube scheduler, the kube proxy, etc. All right. One important thing to note about KubeAPI server is that it can scale horizontally. So you can have it on multiple machines. And why is it that you would want to do that? The reason why you would want to do that is for you to scale your cluster to make it highly available, right? If one of the machine goes down, you have got other instances of the server running, and it kind of makes logical sense, isn't it? That since this is this the one of the most important, the master machine, the processes running on master machine is are the most important processes in your cluster as far as the client interfacing is concerned. If one of the machine goes down, if the master machine goes down, then you would not be able to interact with the cluster. So it's always advisable to have it scaled in a highly available manner, right? All right. So what is ETCD server? All right. Before we go to ETCD server, why don't we go ahead and deploy the KubeAPI server, right? As usual, this is our item. Yeah. We have our kubelet running. We have our Docker observing the POS container as well as the nginx deployment that we did. Let's go back to this documentation here quickly. Let me see. Let me just make it full screen for you. Yeah, you are somewhere here, right? This is all fine. What we'll do is we'll remove nginx from this machine. All right, so I'm just going to have another pane over here, connect back to the machine. Yeah, and we'll say that okay, pwd ls-l. Yeah, and we will say that okay, rm our manifests and nginx.yaml. We'll remove it. All right, so that our POS container and our nginx pod is also removed. We'll keep it. We'll keep the slate clean. All right. We'll go back here and look at our Kube API server, right? It is a typical YAML description, right? Where I've given my, the name of the component as KubeAPI server. These are those, ports on which it's supposed to work. The name again here, the image that I'll be fetching from, from GitHub, the image that your cluster will be fetching from GitHub, and a couple of other details which are not relevant at this point of time. All right, so as we always do, what we'll do is we'll connect to this machine, and we will go to YAMLs, yeah, and what we'll do is we'll put this file kubeapi server.yaml into the YAML folder, right? Let's put it over here, yeah. Let's go back to our item and check it out, yeah. cd to YAMLs and check it out, right? Cool, you have it here, right? So now just copy it to your manifest folder. Not very surprisingly, the moment you will copy it, it will go ahead and start a POS container, and then it is going to deploy the Kube API server for you. Excellent. So we have got one more component working very well. Let's move on to the next component, which is the ETCD server. Right? As I said, it's kind of a data store, right? As it says over here in the slide, it stores the configuration information which can be used by each of the nodes in the cluster. Right? Again, it's highly available because the whole master machine is supposed to be highly available in a typical real-life production environment, and it can be distributed across multiple nodes. Right? Now, the important point again to note over here is that it can only be accessed by the Kube API server. Right? Because it might have sensitive information like people username and password, the node, your worker node, credentials, information about the machines in the cluster, and things like that. Right? So you cannot directly access it. You configure it in production in such a way that you cannot directly access it. You always access it through the Kube API server. All right, so with that understanding under our belt, we'll just quickly move that file also to our YAMLs folder. All right, and not very surprisingly, we will deploy that as well to ETCD, right? Yep, to our manifest folder, and you know what is going to happen. Right, another POS container will come into picture, right, for the Kube API server. Yeah, so we have got two POS containers right now. Yeah, and we have the POS, we have the ETCD server also running. Yeah, so that's pretty much about it for this session. In the next session, we'll learn about a few more components. All right, so see you next time. Thank you.